Hey, Marty again here. Welcome back to LB Music. In today's video, I want to show you Mixbus plugins. And I normally use third-party plugins on the Mixbus, especially when I don't use the console, for example, when I'm mixing in a box. I use for that mostly the Waves plugins with saturation, a little bit of compression, and also tape emulation plugins. And I thought to myself, well, let's see how we can actually do that with the stock Logic plugins. And so I was sitting in a session and I started adding plugins to kind of simulate what I normally do with the third-party plugins. So I used the Logic compressor, I used a little bit of clip distortion, and I used the secret tape delay that you've probably seen in my other videos, where you can actually simulate the tape heads and the compression and the distortion you get from a tape machine. And yeah, so I would say let's check that out and see how the Logic plugins compare to the Wave ones. Alright, so here we are now in Logic Pro X. I have here the three mixdown tracks. So the first one is with the Waves plugins. Second one are the stock Logic plugins, as you can see here. And the third one is just for reference without any plugins. I tried to level match them as good as I can. So as you can see here, with no plugins, I had to boost it quite a fairly high amount, plus 4.5 dB, and here a little bit of a boosting, and with the Waves, I reduced it just quite a bit. And yeah, so let's go quickly now here through the Waves plugins chain that I normally use when mixing. First, I start here off with a little bit of a analog console saturation, which is modeled here after an obvious SSL console. Those don't use any of the VCA groups or something like that. I just use it in stereo mode and with a little bit of a drive, around 6 here, and that's about it. Next thing is the SSL comp. I really like the sound on the Mixbus of the SSL compressor. I think Waves did quite a good job here. And a ratio of 2, attack just 10 milliseconds, auto release. It's barely touching the needle, so it's just for the particular sound that I like to get here on the master bus. I tried, for example, the API, the 2500, but I tend to more use the SSL comp. Next thing here, just to boost a little bit of the top end, 12,000 Hertz here, the PuigTech, the EQ P1A. I really like the sound of this plugin, and I mostly use it on the Mixbus. And finally also another saturation stage here, and here I just started with the Abbey Road default setting here. I think that's quite a nice sound, and I mainly go from that. The only thing that I do always is here reduce the noise level of the unit itself. Don't like that at all. Saturation is here set to 0. I think it's quite saturated with the NLS and together with the J37, so that's pretty enough. And yeah, so let's listen now quickly to the Mixdown, the Waves plugins, and then we head over to the Logic Pro X, the stock Logic chain, right? As you can see here, just a little bit of tapping here on the needle, very, very little compression. All right, so that's the Waves. We're gonna do the compare afterwards. Now let's go to the Logic Pro X, and I was really curious if you can actually match this sound or the kind of the feeling on the Mixbus with stock Logic plugins compared to third-party plugins like the Waves ones. So what I did firstly here is to kind of get a little bit of a saturation here, and I use here the clip distortion plugin. So I kind of try to get a sound that is similar to the saturation here of the NLS, even though I know that it's not modeled after the same SSL or analog console or whatever, but you can get clip distortion sound very pleasing, and it really smoothens the transients, so the top end. And what I did here is I went from the preset, from the warm clip distortion, and on the low pass filter went all the way up to 20,000 Hertz. I left the high shelving here at 20 Hertz. Dialed in here on the mix just 16% and a little bit of drive of 15. So let's disengage, let's disengage the other plugins here and just leave here the clip distortion. And let's listen now without and with the clip distortion. So as you can kind of hear, it's really a little bit smoother already on the top end. And the next thing here that I have in the chain is the compressor, the same as with the Waves one. And you probably have seen it in my other videos that when I use the stock Logic compressor, I tend to use on the Mixbus, for example, the analog tape in the platinum setting. However, in the platinum setting, it goes from the digital one, and I changed here to the VCA compressor because I really like the sound of that. And what I did here is I left the ratio, the attack and the release the same, but I added a little bit of a soft distortion. Had to dial in a little bit of a low threshold just to get the compression going, and as you will see, it's just 1 to 1.5 dB, so pretty much the same as on the SSL compressor with the Waves, but here we use the stock Logic one. So let's listen to that without and with. So just for reference here, let's put the distortion off. Let's go back to soft. So this is a really neat thing that they built in here in the stock Logic compressor. Yeah, and that's the compression. And to get back a little bit of a top end here, I just used the channel EQ. It doesn't have any modeling or saturation to it, just dialed in here around 11,000 Hertz plus 7 dB, because the next plugin we're going to use is a tape delay to kind of simulate the tape effect or the natural compression and saturation that tape has. And so let's dial that in here quickly. Okay, so brings back a lot of top end. And finally here, the tape delay. And you've probably seen my video where I kind of show this as a secret tape emulation plugin in Logic, because obviously Logic doesn't have a dedicated plugin for that. But you can kind of get the sound of that with the tape delay, because it has a character mode here where you can actually simulate a little bit of a saturation with the tape pads in different mode and with the clip threshold. So what you do here is you disengage here the tempo sync completely and the delay time. Don't want any feedback modulation, you can leave alone. And then you have to play around with the dry and wet knob, so just to get it a little bit saturated. So it's a very, very nice thing on those plugins that you have now a dry and wet kind of knob, where you can actually dial in how much of the wet signal you want. Okay, so I would say let's start with the disengaged plugin, and then I'm gonna engage it. So just for the record, let's disengage the other three ones and just listen to the wet signal here. So that's without. This is the full wet signal of the tape delay. You can really overdo that. It gets really distorted. Bring now back the dry. You can really play around with that, so really the sound you were after. Let's leave it kind of like that, for example. Bring back those other plugins. Alright, and so that's about that. And finally, I would say let's compare those two mixdown tracks, so they're the Waves and the Logic one, how they actually sound to each other. And let's see if the stock Logic plugins can keep up with the Waves ones. So let's start with the Waves and then switch to the Logic. Alright, and just for the record now, let's check it out with no plugins at all. And then we're gonna switch back to the Logic. You can hear a little bit more of compression, more saturation. Again, no plugins. Let's make it a little bit louder. All right, so those are the plugins. First of all, clip distortion, then compression, and then a little bit of a top end boost, and finally the tape delay. And that's all about it. I think the Logic plugins do a really great job here. Alright, so thanks for watching again. I hope that it was kind of interesting for you and to actually see what you can do with the stock Logic plugins. They're very useful, and even though you don't get quite the sound as with the Waves plugins, for example, or with other third-party plugins, they actually do a really great job here. And hey, they are free, they come with the DAW. Same goes probably for all the other DAWs like Reaper and Pro Tools or Studio One or something like that. Alright, so thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos like that. I also do from time to time some hardware tests. And as always, see you in the next video.